The black limousine pulled up in front of La Bella Vista at exactly 7:30. The driver rushed out to open the rear door, and Vincent Harrington stepped onto the sidewalk like he owned the entire street. His shoes probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His watch definitely did. Vincent was a man who had made his fortune in real estate and tech investments. $200 million, give or take a few million. But the money wasn't the most notable thing about him. It was the way he treated people. Or rather, how he looked down on them. He walked through the restaurant's entrance with three of his business partners trailing behind him. The hostess practically jumped to attention when she saw him. Vincent didn't acknowledge her greeting. He never did. In his mind, service workers were just part of the furniture. They existed to make his life easier, nothing more. "Mr. Harrington, your usual table is ready," the hostess said with a practiced smile. Vincent walked past her without a word. His usual table was in the center of the dining room. Not by the window with a view. Not in a quiet corner. Right in the middle where everyone could see him. That's exactly how he wanted it. The restaurant was elegant and expensive. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. White tablecloths covered every table. Soft, classical music played in the background. This was the kind of place where ordinary people came maybe once a year for anniversaries. Vincent came twice a week. As he settled into his chair, Vincent's eyes swept across the room. He liked to observe people. Not because he cared about them, but because he enjoyed the feeling of being superior. That businessman in the corner probably made $500,000 a year, peasant. That couple celebrating something by the window. Probably saving up for months to afford this meal. Pathetic. His business partners sat down and started talking about a deal they were working on. Vincent half listened. He was more interested in finding fault with something. It was like a game to him. How long would it take before someone made a mistake he could criticize? A young man approached their table. He looked to be in his late 20s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. His waiter's uniform was perfectly pressed, and he carried himself with quiet dignity. "Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Adrian, and I'll be taking care of you tonight," he said warmly. "Can I start you off with some drinks?" Vincent barely glanced at him. Water, ice cold. And I mean actually cold, not room temperature garbage. "Of course, sir," Adrian replied, his smile never wavering. One of Vincent's colleagues ordered wine. Another asked about the evening specials. Adrian answered every question with patience and knowledge. He clearly knew the menu well and cared about providing good service, but Vincent wasn't impressed. He never was. When Adrian returned with the drinks, Vincent took one sip of his water and set the glass down with a loud clink. "This isn't cold enough." Adrian looked genuinely concerned. "I apologize, sir. Let me get you a fresh glass with more ice." "You do that," Vincent said dismissively. The meal continued in this pattern. Every course brought a new complaint. The breadbasket took too long. The appetizer was too small. The lighting at the table was wrong. Most of these complaints were completely unreasonable, but Adrian handled each one with grace and professionalism. Vincent's business partners exchanged uncomfortable glances. They'd seen this behavior before. It was embarrassing, but nobody dared to say anything. Vincent was the money man, the guy who could make or break deals. You didn't criticize Vincent Harrington if you wanted to keep doing business with him. "So, as I was saying," Vincent continued, barely pausing his conversation to bark orders at Adrian, "the problem with most people is they don't have any vision. No ambition. That's why they end up in dead-end jobs." He said this loudly enough that nearby tables could hear. His colleagues nodded along, though one of them looked uncomfortable. When the main courses arrived, Adrian carefully placed each plate in front of the correct person. Vincent had ordered the most expensive steak on the menu. He always did. Not because he particularly loved steak, but because he could. As Adrian set down Vincent's plate, his arm brushed ever so slightly against Vincent's suit jacket. It was the kind of tiny, accidental contact that happens in restaurants all the time. The jacket wasn't stained. It wasn't damaged. It was barely even touched, but Vincent saw his opportunity. "Excuse me?" Vincent's voice boomed across the restaurant. The entire dining room went quiet. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Everyone turned to look. Adrian stepped back, his eyes wide. "Sir, I'm so sorry, Do you have any idea what you just did?" Vincent stood up, his face reddening with theatrical anger. "This suit costs $5,000. $5,000? I sincerely apologize, Mr. Harrington. I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to? You didn't mean to?" Vincent's voice dripped with contempt. "That's the problem with people like you. You stumble through life not meaning to do things, not thinking, not applying yourself to anything." Adrian's face flushed. His hands were shaking slightly, but he kept his composure. "Sir, please let you what? Ruin something else?" Vincent turned to address the entire restaurant now like he was giving a performance. "This is exactly what's wrong with this generation. No skills, no ambition. Just shuffling plates around and calling it a career." The other diners looked away, embarrassed for Adrian. Some looked angry at Vincent but said nothing. The restaurant manager started hurrying over from across the room. "This suit," Vincent continued, pointing at his jacket, "costs more than you probably make in 6 months. Maybe a year. And you can't even manage to serve a plate without destroying other people's property." Adrian stood there, taking the verbal assault. His jaw was clenched, and his eyes had a glassy quality that suggested he was fighting back emotions. But he didn't snap. He didn't yell back. He just stood there with his head slightly bowed, enduring it. "I want him fired," Vincent announced to the approaching manager. "Right now. This kind of incompetence is unacceptable." The manager, a middle-aged man named Roberto, looked distressed. "Mr. Harrington, please, I'm sure we can resolve this. Adrian is one of our best." "I don't care if he's your only waiter," Vincent cut him off. "Either he goes or I never come back here again. And I'll make sure everyone in my circles knows about the terrible service at this establishment." It was a threat, plain and simple. La Bella Vista relied on wealthy clients like Vincent. His word could seriously damage their reputation. Adrian finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "Roberto, it's okay. I'll go." "No, wait," Roberto started, but before anyone could say anything else, a voice cut through the tension like a knife. "That won't be necessary." Everyone turned to see an elegant older woman approaching the table. She was in her 70s, with silver hair pulled back in a classic bun and sharp, intelligent eyes. She wore a simple but expensive dress and carried herself with the kind of authority that comes from decades of experience. This was Elena Rossi, the owner of La Bella Vista. She'd built this restaurant from nothing 40 years ago. And she didn't tolerate nonsense from anyone, no matter how much money they had. The entire room seemed to hold its breath as she walked toward Vincent's table, her expression calm but unreadable. Whatever was about to happen, everyone sensed that the evening was about to take an unexpected turn.
Elena Rossi didn't rush. She never did. She walked with the calm confidence of someone who had seen everything in 40 years of running a restaurant. Nothing rattled her anymore. Not angry customers. Not kitchen disasters. And certainly not bullies in expensive suits. She stopped at Vincent's table and looked directly into his eyes. "Mr. Harrington," she said, her voice pleasant but firm. I couldn't help but notice the commotion. Vincent straightened up, clearly surprised that someone was challenging him. But he recovered quickly. "Mrs. Rossi, I'm glad you're here. Your employee just damaged my $5,000 suit, and your manager seems unwilling to address the situation properly." Elena glanced at Vincent's jacket. There wasn't a mark on it. Not a stain. Not a wrinkle. Nothing. She'd been in this business long enough to spot a setup when she saw one. "I see," she said slowly. "And what exactly would you like me to do about this? Damage." "I want him fired," Vincent said, gesturing at Adrian without even looking at him. "And I expect the restaurant to pay for the cleaning. Possibly replacement if the damage is permanent." Elena nodded thoughtfully. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. "Mr. Harrington, you've been coming to my restaurant for 3 years now. In that time, you've complained about the temperature of your drinks 17 times. sent back food 12 times, and demanded that 6 different servers be fired for various minor mistakes. Is that correct? Vincent's eyes narrowed. He clearly didn't like being called out. I have high standards. Is that a problem? Not at all, Alina replied. High standards are admirable. But there's a difference between having standards and using them as an excuse to belittle people. The nearby tables were completely silent now. Everyone was watching this showdown between the millionaire and the restaurant owner. Vincent's business partners looked extremely uncomfortable. I don't have to listen to this, Vincent said coldly. I'm a paying customer. A very good customer. I spend thousands of dollars here every month. You do, Alina agreed. And I appreciate your business. But money doesn't buy you the right to humiliate my staff. Vincent laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your staff? This boy is a waiter. He carries plates for a living. I'm sorry if I hurt his feelings, but maybe he should focus on doing his job properly instead of being so sensitive. Adrian stood off to the side, his face still flushed with embarrassment. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Alina turned to look at Adrian for a moment, and something passed between them. A look of understanding. Then she turned back to Vincent. Tell me something, Mr. Harrington. What do you think makes a person valuable? Vincent scoffed. Excuse me. It's a simple question. What gives a person worth? Is it their bank account? Their job title? The price of their clothing? Those things certainly don't hurt, Vincent said. Look, I don't know what point you're trying to make here. But you said Adrian should get a real job, Alina interrupted. You implied he has no skills, no talents, that he's just someone who shuffles plates. Is that an accurate summary of your opinion? Vincent shrugged. If the shoe fits. Interesting. Lena looked thoughtful. Then her eyes drifted to the corner of the restaurant where a beautiful grand piano sat. It was one of the restaurant's signature features, a gorgeous black instrument that caught the light from the chandeliers. Most people assumed it was just decoration, but it was actually a very expensive, perfectly maintained piano. I have a proposal for you, Mr. Harrington, Elena said. Vincent raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. You seem very confident in your assessments of people. Very sure about who has talent and who doesn't. Who matters and who doesn't. She gestured toward the piano. Do you play? What does that have to do with anything? Just answer the question. Can you play the piano? Vincent shifted in his seat. I took lessons as a child. 10 years of classical training, actually. I was quite good. But I still don't see perfect, Alina said. Then here's my proposal. You play something on that piano. Anything you like? Show us your talent. Then, if he's willing, Adrian plays something. We'll let the performances speak for themselves. The restaurant buzzed with whispers. This was getting interesting. Vincent looked confused. What's the point of this? You've made a lot of assumptions about Adrian tonight, Alina said calmly. About his worth, his abilities, his place in the world. I'm simply suggesting we test those assumptions. This is ridiculous, Vincent said. But there was uncertainty in his voice now. Is it? You're so certain that you're better than him, that you have more to offer, more talent, more value. Surely a simple musical performance shouldn't intimidate you. Vincent's jaw clenched. He was trapped, and he knew it. If he refused, he'd look like a coward in front of everyone. But there was something in Elena's eyes that made him nervous. She was too confident, too calm. And what do I get when I win this little competition? Vincent asked. When you win, Alina said, emphasizing the word, your meal tonight is completely free. Not just tonight, actually. Free meals for a month. And I'll personally apologize to you in front of everyone here. Vincent's business partners perked up at that. Free meals at La Bella Vista for a month? That was worth thousands of dollars? And if I lose? Vincent asked, though his tone suggested he thought that was impossible. If Adrian's performance is better than yours, you apologize, publicly, to him and to everyone in this restaurant. And you donate $50,000 to a charity of Adrian's choice. The room gasped. $50,000. Vincent's face went red. 50,000. That's too much. Alina asked innocently. I thought money wasn't an issue for you. After all, you just told us your suit costs $5,000. What's 10 times that amount to someone of your wealth and status? Vincent was backed into a corner. Every eye in the restaurant was on him. His business partners were watching. The other diners were watching. If he refused now, he'd look weak, afraid. And Vincent Harrington's entire identity was built on being superior to everyone else. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "Fine, I'll do it." Alina nodded. "Excellent." And Adrian. Everyone turned to look at the young waiter. He stood there, his face pale. His hands were trembling slightly. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. "I... ... His voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. "I don't know if I should." "You don't have to," Alina said gently. "This is entirely your choice. No pressure." Adrian looked at the piano, really looked at it, and something changed in his expression. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something else. Something that looked like longing, like hunger. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll do it." Vincent stood up, straightening his jacket with exaggerated care. "Well then, let's get this over with. I have actual important things to do tonight." He walked toward the piano with the swagger of someone who had never lost at anything in his life. The other diners shifted in their seats to get a better view. Some pulled out their phones. Sensing that something memorable was about to happen, Roberto, the manager, quickly went around the restaurant, explaining the situation to the few tables that had missed the drama. Within moments, everyone knew what was happening. The millionaire versus the waiter, talent versus supposed mediocrity, pride versus humility. Vincent reached the piano and sat down on the bench. He flexed his fingers dramatically, like a concert pianist preparing for a performance. Then he looked back at Adrian with a smirk. "I almost feel bad about this," Vincent said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Taking money from you seems cruel. But hey, you agreed to it." Adrian didn't respond. He just stood there, watching. Alina positioned herself where she could see both the piano and the entire restaurant. Her face was serene, but there was a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She knew something. Everyone could sense it. Vincent placed his hands on the keys. The restaurant held its collective breath, and then Vincent began to play.
Vincent's fingers moved across the keys with practiced precision. He'd chosen Chopin's Minute Waltz, a piece that was famous for being fast and technically challenging. It was a smart choice for someone trying to show off. The notes came quickly, dancing across the piano in a flurry of sound. He played well. There was no denying that. His 10 years of childhood lessons were evident in every measure. His fingers hit the right notes at the right time. The tempo was correct. The dynamics were acceptable. It was the kind of performance that would impress people at a dinner party. The restaurant listened politely. A few people nodded along with the music. Vincent's business partners smiled and gave each other knowing looks as if to say, "Well, this is over. The kid doesn't stand a chance." When Vincent finished, he lifted his hands from the keys with a flourish. He stood up and gave a small bow. The restaurant applauded. It wasn't a standing ovation, but it was respectful, appreciative. He'd played well, and everyone acknowledged it. Vincent walked back toward his table, his chest puffed out with confidence. "Not bad for someone who hasn't played in 20 years, he said loudly. Then he looked at Adrian. "Your turn. Though I understand if you want to back out now. Save yourself the embarrassment." Adrian didn't respond. He was staring at the piano like it was an old friend he hadn't seen in years. His face had gone through several emotions in the past few minutes, fear, doubt, but now there was something else there. Something that looked almost like peace. He walked slowly toward the piano. Each step seemed deliberate, careful. When he reached it, he stood there for a moment, just looking at it. Then he did something unexpected. He removed his waiter's jacket, folding it carefully and setting it on a nearby chair. Underneath, he wore a simple white shirt. The gesture was small, but it felt significant. Like he was shedding one identity and stepping into another. Adrian sat down on the bench. He didn't flex his fingers or crack his knuckles. He didn't look at the audience. He just placed his hands gently on the keys and closed his eyes, For several seconds, nothing happened. The restaurant was so quiet you could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning. People leaned forward in their seats. Vincent stood with his arms crossed, a smug expression on his face. Then Adrian began to play. The first notes were soft, gentle. They floated through the air like whispers. But there was something in those notes. Something that made people stop breathing. It wasn't just sound. It was emotion. Pure, raw emotion translated into music he was playing. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. Anyone who knew classical music recognized it immediately. It was one of the most difficult and emotionally demanding pieces ever written. The kind of piece that concert pianists spent months preparing to perform, but Adrian wasn't just playing it. He was living it. His hands moved across the keys with a combination of technical mastery and passionate expression that was mesmerizing to watch. The music swelled and fell, told stories, painted pictures in the air. It spoke of longing and loss, of hope and heartbreak, of beauty and pain. The soft beginning gave way to powerful, dramatic passages. Adrian's entire body moved with the music. His eyes remained closed, but his face showed everything he was feeling. The music poured out of him like it had been locked inside for too long. Desperate to be free, around the restaurant, people sat frozen, mouths hanging open, eyes wide. A woman at a table near the window had tears streaming down her face. A man in a business suit sat with his fork still raised halfway to his mouth, completely forgotten. Even the kitchen staff had stopped working and gathered in the doorway to listen. Vincent's smug expression had vanished. He stood there looking confused, then shocked, then something that might have been horrified. His business partners weren't looking at him anymore. They were completely absorbed in the performance. The music built to a crescendo. Adrian's fingers flew across the keys with impossible speed and precision. The notes cascaded like water, like thunder, like 1,000 emotions all happening at once. And yet, for all the technical complexity, it never felt showy. It felt honest, real, like Adrian was sharing a piece of his soul with everyone in the room. Then came the quiet section. The part where the music softened, became vulnerable. Adrian's playing here was so delicate, so tender, that people held their breath, afraid that any sound might break the spell. You could have heard a pin drop. An elderly man at a corner table was openly weeping. His wife held his hand, her own eyes glistening with tears. Several other diners had given up trying to hide their emotions. They cried freely, unashamed. This wasn't just a piano performance. This was something deeper, something transcendent. The kind of moment that reminds you why humans create art in the first place. Why we need beauty in a world that can be so harsh. The final section built back up, growing in power and intensity. Adrian's whole being was focused on the music. Nothing else existed. Not the restaurant. Not the audience. Not Vincent or the bet or any of it. Just the piano and the notes and the overwhelming need to express what couldn't be said with words. When he played the final chord, he held it, letting it resonate through the entire space. The sound gradually faded, softer and softer, until it disappeared completely. For several seconds after the last note died, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The silence was absolute, and someone started clapping. Slowly at first. Just one person. Then another joined. Then another. Within seconds, the entire restaurant erupted in thunderous applause. People stood up. All of them. Every single person in the restaurant was on their feet, clapping so hard their hands hurt. Some were still crying. Others were shaking their heads in disbelief. The applause went on and on, wave after wave of appreciation and awe. "Bravo!" someone shouted. "Bravo!" Others took up the cry. "Bravo! Bravo!" Adrian opened his eyes slowly, like he was waking from a dream. He looked around the restaurant, seeming almost surprised to find himself there. His own eyes were wet with tears. He stood up from the piano on shaky legs and gave a small, humble bow. The applause somehow got even louder. Elena Rossi walked to Adrian and embraced him. She was crying too, her carefully composed exterior finally cracking. She held him for a long moment, and when she pulled back, she was smiling through her tears. Vincent stood frozen. His face had gone pale. His business partners were applauding along with everyone else, completely forgetting about their colleague. One of them had a strange expression on his face, like he was seeing Vincent clearly for the first time and didn't like what he saw. Elena turned to address the room. She had to wait several minutes for the applause to die down. Even then, people kept spontaneously bursting into fresh rounds of clapping. Finally, it was quiet enough for her to speak. 10 years ago, Elena began, her voice thick with emotion. This young man was known by a different title. Not waiter, not server. She paused, letting the anticipation build. 10 years ago, Adrian Taylor won the International Tchaikovsky competition. He was 18 years old, the youngest winner in the competition's history. Gasps echoed through the restaurant. People looked at each other in shock. The Tchaikovsky competition was one of the most prestigious classical music competitions in the world. Winners became instant celebrities in the classical music community. He had everything ahead of him, Elena continued. Recording contracts, invitations from concert halls in Paris, Vienna, New York. The greatest conductors in the world wanted to work with him. He was being called a once-in-a-generation talent. The next great master. She looked at Adrian with such tenderness that it made people's hearts ache. But then life happened, she said softly. And Adrian had to make a choice that no 18-year-old should ever have to make. The restaurant was completely silent again, hanging on every word. Vincent looked like he might be sick. Elena gestured to Adrian. I think it's time they knew the whole story. If you're ready? Adrian nodded. He took a deep breath and faced the crowd. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. My mother got sick, he said simply. Adrian's voice was steady, but everyone could hear the pain underneath. My mother got sick, cancer, stage 4. The doctor said she had maybe a year, possibly 2 if she was lucky and got aggressive treatment. He paused, collecting himself. The restaurant remained completely silent. Even the sound from the kitchen had stopped. She was a single mom, raised me by herself from the time I was 3. My father left and never came back. So it was just us? Always just us. A small smile crossed his face. She worked 2 jobs to pay for my piano lessons. I remember her coming home exhausted, barely able to stand, but she'd still sit and listen to me practice. Every single night. Several people in the audience nodded, understanding that kind of sacrifice. That kind of love. When I won the Tchaikovsky competition, she was there in the audience. Front row. I'll never forget the look on her face. She was so proud, so happy. She kept saying, "We did it, baby. We did it." Adrian's voice cracked slightly. 3 months later, she collapsed at work. That's when we found out about the cancer. He took a breath and continued. The treatment she needed wasn't covered by her insurance. The good treatment, the kind that might actually save her life, was experimental, expensive. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. People shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew how crushing medical bills could be. I had contracts waiting. Recording deals, performance fees, but all of that was future money. Money that would come in over time. My mother didn't have time. She needed treatment immediately. So He stopped, struggling with the words. I canceled everything. Every concert, every contract, every opportunity. Elena squeezed his shoulder supportively. My agent thought I was insane. The people at the record label were furious. They threatened to sue me. But I didn't care. What was I supposed to do? Let my mother die while I played piano for rich people at fancy concert halls? The question hung in the air. No one had an answer because everyone knew there was no answer. He'd made the only choice a decent person could make. I took 3 jobs, worked 90 hours a week, sometimes more, whatever I could find. Construction during the day, restaurant work at night, weekend shifts at a warehouse. I sent every penny to the hospital. Adrian looked down at his hands, the same hands that had just created such beautiful music. The treatment worked for a while. She got 2 more years, not the year the doctors predicted. 2 full years. We got to spend time together. Really be together. She got to see me grow up a little more. And when she passed, she wasn't in pain. She was comfortable. She was at peace. Tears flowed freely now throughout the restaurant. Even some of the men who'd been trying to hold it together gave up and wiped their eyes. After she died, I tried to go back. I called my old agent. The record labels. The concert halls. I sent emails. Made phone calls, but he shrugged helplessly. The classical music world had moved on. There were new young talents. New prodigies. My moment had passed. I was old news. Nobody returned my calls. Nobody remembered who I was. Vincent's face had gone from pale to ashen. He looked like he wanted to disappear. I didn't blame them, Adrian continued. That's just how the industry works. You get one shot, one moment in the spotlight. If you're not there to grab it, someone else will. I knew that when I made my choice. And I'd make the same choice again in a heartbeat. He smiled, and despite everything, it was a genuine smile. Mrs. Rossi gave me a job here 2 years ago. She knew who I was, who I used to be. She keeps an old upright piano in the basement storage room. Every night after my shift ends, after we close, she lets me go down there and play. Just me and that beat-up old piano. No audience. No pressure. Just music. Elena was crying openly now, not even trying to hide it. The piano hasn't left me, Adrian said softly. And I haven't left it. The music is still here. He tapped his chest. It was just waiting. Waiting for the right moment to come back out. He looked directly at Vincent for the first time since his performance. So, when you said I should get a real job, that I'm just someone who shuffles plates, that I have no talent or worth ... He paused. You weren't completely wrong. I'm just a waiter. That's my job? That's how I pay my bills? But that's not all I am. It's not all any of us are. The words landed like stones. Vincent couldn't meet Adrian's gaze. Every person you meet is carrying a story you know nothing about, Adrian said. The woman who cleans your office might be putting 3 kids through college. The man who delivers your mail might be a veteran who served his country. The teenager making your coffee might be supporting sick parents. You never know. You can't know unless you take the time to see people as actual human beings instead of just, he gestured vaguely, background noise in your life. Vincent stood there, completely still. His business partners had moved away from him slightly, like they didn't want to be associated with him anymore. Elena stepped forward. I think, she said, her voice gentle but firm, Mr. Harrington has something he'd like to say. All eyes turned to Vincent. He looked smaller somehow, like the weight of his own cruelty had physically pressed him down. His expensive suit suddenly looked like a costume. His confident demeanor was completely gone. For a long moment he didn't speak. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. He was a man who was used to having all the answers, all the power. But right now he had nothing. He finally managed. His voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know what to say. An apology might be a good start, someone called from the back of the restaurant. A few people murmured agreement. Vincent flinched like he'd been slapped. He looked around the room and saw the same expression on every face. Disappointment, disgust, pity. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Then louder, I'm sorry. Adrian, I am profoundly sorry. Adrian nodded but didn't say anything. You're right. About all of it. I've spent so long measuring people by their bank accounts and their job titles that I forgot. He swallowed hard. I forgot that those things don't matter. Not really. I forgot that every person has value, has dignity, has a story. He looked down at his expensive shoes. I made my first million when I was 26. By 30, I had 50 million. By 40, over 200 million. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that the money made me better than everyone else. that it gave me the right to treat people however I wanted. Vincent's voice was shaking now. But you just played more beautifully than I ever could in my entire life. You sacrificed everything for someone you loved. You work 3 times harder than I do and show more grace in a single day than I've shown in years. And I called you worthless. The shame on his face was painful to watch. I can't take back what I said. I can't undo the humiliation I put you through tonight. But I can tell you this. He looked Adrian in the eye. You are worth 100 of me. 1,000. And I am deeply, truly sorry. The restaurant was silent. It wasn't the odd silence from after the performance. This was different, heavier. Everyone was watching to see what would happen next. Adrian walked slowly toward Vincent. Vincent tensed, like he expected to be hit. He probably deserved it, but Adrian extended his hand. "Thank you," Adrian said simply, "for apologizing. That took courage." Vincent stared at the offered hand like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Then with shaking fingers he reached out and shook it. The handshake lasted only a moment, but it felt significant. Like something important had shifted, Elena cleared her throat. "There's still the matter of the $50,000 donation, Mr. Harrington." Vincent nodded quickly. "Of course, absolutely. Adrian, whatever charity you choose, I'll write the check tonight." "Actually," Adrian said thoughtfully, "I'd like it to go to the hospital's cancer treatment fund, to help families who can't afford care. So maybe someone else won't have to make the choice I made." More tears. More sniffles around the restaurant. It was perfect. Of course, that's what he would choose. "Done," Vincent said immediately. "In fact," he paused, "what if we made it 100,000? Adrian's eyes widened. 100,000? Adrian repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Vincent nodded. "You're right. What you said earlier about not knowing people's stories. I never thought about it that way. If this money can help even one family avoid the choice you had to make, it's worth it." The restaurant erupted in spontaneous applause again. But Vincent raised his hand, asking for quiet. "Wait, there's more I want to say." Everyone settled down. Curious, Vincent turned to face the entire restaurant. "I owe all of you an apology, too. You had to witness my terrible behavior tonight. The way I spoke to Adrian, the way I demanded he be fired over nothing, that wasn't okay. And honestly, this isn't the first time I've acted like this. It probably wasn't even the worst time." His business partners shifted uncomfortably. They'd seen him treat people this way dozens of times. "I've been telling myself for years that success gave me the right to look down on people. That making money meant I was smarter, better, more important than everyone else. But tonight showed me something." He looked at Adrian. "Real success isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in character, in sacrifice, in how we treat the people around us, especially those who can't do anything for us in return." One of his business partners started clapping slowly. Then the others joined. Soon the whole restaurant was applauding again, but this time it was for Vincent's honesty. For his willingness to admit he was wrong. When the applause died down, Elena spoke up. "Mr. Harrington, I appreciate your apology and your generous donation. But I hope you understand that words alone aren't enough. Real change requires action." Vincent nodded seriously. "You're absolutely right. What can I do?" Elena looked at Adrian, then back at Vincent. This young man sacrificed his dreams to save someone he loved. He lost his chance at the career he'd worked his whole life for. That's not something money alone can fix, but... She paused meaningfully. "You have connections, resources, influence in circles that Adrian can't reach anymore." Vincent's eyes lit up with understanding. "You want me to help him get back into music. Only if that's what Adrian wants," Elena said firmly. "This isn't about you playing hero to make yourself feel better. It's about using your privilege to help undo some of the injustice in the world." Adrian looked overwhelmed. I appreciate it, but the classical music world has moved on. I'm 30 now. That's old in this industry. There are teenagers winning competitions, getting contracts. Nobody wants... Stop," Vincent interrupted gently. "I just watched you play like an angel. Everyone in this restaurant heard the same thing. Talent like yours doesn't have an expiration date. He pulled out his phone. I have friends. Wealthy friends who sit on the boards of symphonies and concert halls. People who owe me favors. Let me make some calls. I couldn't ask you to, Adrian started. You're not asking. I'm offering. Actually, I'm insisting. Vincent's expression softened. You gave up everything for your mother. Let someone help you for once. Adrian looked at Elena. She smiled and nodded. Let him do this. You deserve a second chance. Over the next hour, while the restaurant slowly returned to normal, Vincent made phone calls. He stepped outside for privacy, but through the windows, people could see him pacing, talking animatedly. Gesturing with his free hand, Adrian sat at a table with Elena, still processing everything that had happened. Other diners came up to congratulate him, to tell him how moved they'd been by his performance. Several slipped him their business cards, offering connections, opportunities, help. Vincent's business partners approached Adrian too. We're sorry, one of them said. We've watched him treat people badly for years and never said anything. That makes us complicit. We should have spoken up. Adrian accepted their apologies graciously. He seemed almost dazed by all the attention, like he couldn't quite believe this was real. When Vincent came back inside, he was smiling. Actually smiling. Not the smug, superior smile from earlier. A real, genuine smile that made him look younger, human. Okay, he said, sitting down at Adrian's table uninvited. But this time, it didn't feel presumptuous. It felt friendly. I've got good news. Great news, actually. Adrian leaned forward. What did you do? First, I called my friend Richard. He's on the board of the Metropolitan Symphony. They're planning a fundraising gala in 6 weeks. He wants you to perform. Adrian's jaw dropped. The Metropolitan Symphony? That's one of the top orchestras in the country. I know. But wait, there's more. Vincent was enjoying this now, you could tell. Enjoying using his influence for good instead of intimidation. I also called Patricia Chun. She runs Steinway Artists Program. She wants to meet with you next week. And I reached out to David Goldberg at Classical Records. He remembers you from the Tchaikovsky competition. He wants to talk about a possible recording contract. I can't. Adrian couldn't form complete sentences. Tears were streaming down his face again. Elena grabbed his hand and squeezed it. She was crying too. Happy tears this time. There's one more thing, Vincent said. And this is non-negotiable. You're quitting this job. Adrian's face fell. What? But I'm hiring you. As a consultant. Vincent held up his hand before Adrian could protest. I'm serious. I need someone to teach me how to be a better person, how to see people the way you do, how to remember that money isn't everything. Consultant fee is $10,000 a month. You can work whatever hours fit around your music career. That's insane, Adrian said. You can't just... I absolutely can. I'm rich, remember? Obscenely rich. I can do whatever I want with my money, and what I want is to help you. Let me do this, please. Adrian looked at Elena for guidance. She shrugged, smiling. I'd hate to lose my best waiter, but I'd love to see you live in your dream. Take the offer, sweetheart. You've earned it 1,000 times over. Adrian covered his face with his hands. His shoulders shook with sobs. But they were good sobs, relief, joy, disbelief that life could change. So dramatically in a single night, Vincent awkwardly patted his shoulder. He clearly wasn't used to comforting people, but he was trying. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Adrian met with the people Vincent had connected him with. The meeting with Steinway went well. The recording contract came through. And the fundraising gala? The gala was everything. Adrian performed Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto again, this time with the full symphony orchestra backing him. The concert hall held over 2,000 people. Every seat was filled. And when he played the final note, the standing ovation lasted for 15 minutes. Vincent was there in the audience. Front row. And for once, he wasn't the center of attention. He was just another person in the crowd, moved by something beautiful, grateful to have played a small part in making it happen. After the concert, reporters wanted to interview Adrian. They wanted to know where he'd been, why he disappeared, what brought him back. Adrian told them the truth. All of it, the cancer, the sacrifice, the years of working 3 jobs, the chance encounter that changed everything. The story went viral. News outlets picked it up. Social media exploded with reactions. Within days, Adrian wasn't just a comeback story in classical music circles. He was a symbol of something bigger. Of choosing love over ambition, of resilience, of second chances. Vincent gave interviews too, though he didn't have to. He talked openly about his behavior that night, about how ashamed he was, about what he'd learned. Some people criticized him, said he was just trying to rehabilitate his image. But most people recognized genuine change when they saw it. He started treating his employees differently, actually learning their names, asking about their lives, leaving generous tips. His business partners noticed the change. Some of them started changing too. 18 months later, Adrian performed at Carnegie Hall, the most prestigious concert venue in America, possibly the world. The concert sold out in hours. In the front row sat Elena Rossi, the restaurant manager Roberto, and several staff members from La Bella Vista, and next to them, looking proud and humbled, sat Vincent. After the performance, Vincent went backstage. Adrian was surrounded by well-wishers, but he saw Vincent and excused himself. "You came," Adrian said, embracing him. "I wouldn't have missed it for anything." Vincent stepped back, looking at his friend, because that's what they'd become over the past year and a half. Unlikely friends. "Thank you. For what?" "You're the one who made all this possible." "No," Vincent said seriously. "Thank you for not giving up on me that night, for accepting my apology, for showing me that it's never too late to change. You didn't just get a second chance at your dream. You gave me a second chance at being human." Adrian smiled. "We saved each other." They stood there for a moment, 2 men from completely different worlds who'd found common ground in the most unexpected way. "You know what the best part is?" Vincent said. "I actually enjoy my life now. I used to think power and money would make me happy. But this, helping people, being kind, using what I have to make things better, this actually feels good." Adrian nodded. "That's the real music, Vincent. The kind that doesn't need a piano." Vincent laughed. Then he pulled an envelope from his jacket. "One more thing. Your consulting fee for this month, plus a bonus." "Vincent, you don't have to." "I know, but I want to. Besides, you've actually helped me. The things we talk about, the way you see the world, It's changed how I do business."